Hello, class, and welcome. Now, this chapter makes me really excited because it's about my favorite data structure, dictionaries. And this is probably the last data structure that we will be talking about in this class. At least the last one that's built into Python. We might cover sets, actually, so whatever. Point being is that this is the one I really like because dictionaries are so powerful. Now, if you've been programming in other languages, you may know dictionaries already, but by another name. So you may have heard of them referred to as associative arrays or hash maps or hash tables or as dictionaries like they are in Python. They all refer to the same fundamental data structure, a key value pairing. And I will show you what this means, but first I want to take a look at um, how lists are limited. So with a list, right, we might be able to. So let's go ahead and just like look at a very common problem one that I'm going to keep coming back to in this chapter. So I'm going to open up a file and let's go ahead and take a look at say 2020 all files. Certainly I have a copy of Dracula here or something, right? Let's go ahead. Oh, right, here's complete works of Shakespeare, PG 100. Great. So let's go ahead and take a look at this file, right? Suppose I wanted to find the most common letter in this file. Figure out what the most common letter was. Right now, it's probably E because E, as you know, is the most common character in the English language. So we could write, for example, something that said, hey, and here I'm just going to write a function. I'm not going to bother reading a file or anything. I'm just going to write a function to kind of show you the limitation. So most common letter. And let's go ahead and give us some text. So, right, and we can simply, let's go ahead and return none just as a placeholder. What this means is that I'm returning nothing, but don't worry about it. You're not going to really use it. I'm just saying, hey, that's a placeholder so that because I always write under the philosophy that your code should always be able to run, be able to execute no matter what. There shouldn't ever be any syntax errors. So let's go ahead and print, right, most common letter of test. So let's go ahead and say test is equal to hello world. And honestly, I really shouldn't care whether it is uppercase or lowercase. So I'm going to plug it into the code. So here, the most common letter would be L because it has three instances of it, right? 2 in hello, 1 in world. So what do we do to do this? Well, you quickly realize that basically that there is a bit of an issue, right? I can't just unlike finding the maximum, right, of something like where we're given some data and we want to find the biggest thing in it, right? So again, right, if I'm given def find biggest, just to review, and where stuff is like a list, okay, find the biggest thing in the list, right? We could just simply say, give me what the biggest thing is in it. Or if we really need to iterate through it because say it is because maybe it's a bunch of lines of text, right? I could simply say for line in stuff, or let's make it even more annoyingly abstract, for thing in stuff, right? Biggest is equal to say 0 if thing is greater than biggest, right? And that thing, or rather that thing becomes the new biggest. And then we would return whatever the biggest thing is, right? That's essentially equivalent of what we did for max. But finding the most common of something, figuring out which thing appears the most, is actually really difficult, even though it seems like a very similar problem, right? It seems like a similar problem on the surface, but it's not. Okay, so let's go ahead and just think. So there's always the brute force solution, right? We're looking for the most common letter in the English language. So, okay, num a's is equal to 0. And then let's just do excessive copying pasting here. Just pretend that English has, for the sake of my fingers, and prevention of Professor Rosen's carpal tunnel, that English only has 4 letters in it. So num A, num D, B, num C, num D. And what we would say is basically 4 letter in text. First, let's make it lowercase. Letter dot lower is equal to a letter. So here, just so that we can, because now why am I doing this? Because I said earlier, just very quickly, that I don't care about uppercase versus lowercase, right? I just want all letters, so I'm just making them all lowercase for ease of comparison, right? And then say, hey, so if letter equals A, num A plus equals 1, and then we just simply do this for every other letter, right? And you would go, okay, B, B, C, C, D, D, and suddenly realize you might actually want to write code to generate this code, because you'd have to do this 26 times for every for every letter in English. That's massively frustrating, right? So while this is and then how do I get the answer, right? I would have to return max of num A. Fortunately, I can use the max function here, which is super convenient, to go, hey, num B, num C, num D, right? And then, except of course, I'd have to do that 26 times, which is, again, a bit of a headache. Just a bit of a headache. Now, the more experienced among you, because you're only going to be able to get this insight via experience, right? You might think, okay, so why don't I instead create an empty list, right? Specifically, an empty list. So I'll go sightings is equal to a blank list, a list of zeros. I'm going to do this multiply by 26. So what does that do? That gives me a list of 26 zeros. Remember replication, so this is just simply 0, 0, 0, 26 times, right? And what you're going is that, like, variables are difficult, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to use, I'm going to basically assign rather than creating 26 variables, I'm going to have one variable with 26 different indexes, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to make, anytime I see an A, I'm going to increment index 0 by 1. Anytime I increment a B, I'm going to increment, or anytime I see a B, I'm going to increment index 1 by 1. C is 2, D is 3, E is 4, and so on. And so what I'm doing is I'm creating a map of my index to the number of times I see it, right? Rather than having to manually create 26 different variables. I'm going to create this kind of mapping from index, and I'm going to pretend, okay, by index 0, what I really mean is A, so I'm going to mentally translate that. Of course, there's some headaches, but I'm going to go ahead and program this in a separate video. You can watch that video if you so please. It might help you understand this, or you can skip on to the other, because this is also an issue to do it, but the answer is dictionaries. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, and then in another video, and the video after that, I'm going to introduce dictionaries.